Another teacher talk session tonight, and tonight we are going to have another educator from different part of the world. And tonight we have an English Language Fellow Instructor at Ege University School of Foreign Languages, Bob Huu Nguyen, and I hope I pronounced his name correctly. When he comes, we are going to start our live session with him. I'm sure we are going to have a very fruitful session with Bob. So I'm waiting. Yeah, Bob is here. If you can send me a request so I can accept it. Alright, Bob. I'm waiting for... I'm just gonna wait. So sorry for this. I'm waiting. I have accepted his invitation. Sorry, his request. Now I'm gonna invite him.
There he is.
There
You
we
see?
are.
Yes.
Magic.
Hello. Yeah. Hello, Bob.
Hello, how are you?
And it's really great to see you.
It's nice to
It's
see you
wonderful
too.
to see. Yeah, nice to see you too. And I would like to say before starting our live session, and I would like to say thank you very much for accepting my invitation for
Of
Teacher
course.
Talks and being with us tonight. It's a great honor to have you.
Thank you. It's great to be here tonight.
Yeah, it's wonderful. But can you say your name because I know Bob, but I don't. I hope I didn't pronounce
It's
wrong.
okay. It's a complicated name, but I would pronounce it just Nguyen or
When?
Nguyen. Vietnamese last
Okay.
name, most common Vietnamese name in the world. Um, Also, it has, sounds in English that we don't have, so that NG doesn't occur at the beginning of a word. So,
I see. Okay.
but Nguyen is fine. Thank
Bob
you.
when? Okay. Bob is fine then. Okay
Yeah.
then. All right. So I know we are all busy. So if you are ready, can we start?
Yeah, let's get started.
Okay. Wonderful. Let's get started then. I know about you, but maybe our audience would like to know about you. So can you tell us about yourself, please, and a bit about your experiences too?
Okay. So yeah, my name is Bob Nguyen. I currently an English Language Fellow in Izmir, Turkey. That's through the U.S. Embassy State Department. And I'm currently teaching prep classes at Ege University, doing teacher trainings, doing some other trainings with other teachers around the country and in Izmir as well. And my experience so far, yeah, I've been in Turkey for over 4 years now. During the
Great.
pandemic, started off in Adana, which is my Turkish hometown. That's what I call it.
Wow. Nice.
But I love living in Izmir. I appreciate everything. Not the winter's weather so far. It's been raining quite a bit. So
Uh-huh.
yeah, and then yeah, everything else. I do a lot of sports. I love cooking. I'm very interested in computers and other things related to technology. So lots of different just
I
interests
see.
and yeah,
I see. Thank you. Thank you, Bob. Let me ask you a question. Have you tried Adana kebab when you were there?
of course. And I've had it for breakfast. So that's what
Ah, I see.
when you're a true Adanian, that's when you have it for
I
breakfast
see.
in the morning at the bazaar.
I see. Great.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Bob. So let me ask you another question. So what was over the turning point or points in your own education?
In my education, so I started off as a computer science major.
Oh,
I
really?
was yeah, I
Oh,
was working in different parts of just doing networking, working, finally with like a nonprofit daycare center where I was working with teachers and their computers, and I always knew that I wanted to get into education. Long story short, somehow I make it to Japan, and I started teaching English at a middle school in northern Japan in a small town called Wakuya. And yeah, I stayed for 4 years. I ended up really enjoying my experience there. I took an introductory, second language acquisition class, and it made me realize that what I was doing in the classroom was right, and I was learning these new terminologies for the first time. And yeah, and then I decided that I wanted to do more with that. I applied for my master's program at Sacramento State University in California, and I ended up going to Ethiopia to teach at a high school. So.
Oh, very
Yeah.
interesting, Ethiopia. Okay, so I know that you have been teaching for a long time, Bob, and probably you have tried different, strategies and methodologies, and also maybe some kind of techniques in your lessons. So probably you have a kind of a philosophy. So what is it? What is your philosophy of teaching?
For me, the philosophy of teaching, something I created, this mind map in grad school, is this idea of feedback, that I give students feedback, whether it's spoken, written, and my students give me feedback. So I ask for a lot of comments from them, suggestions. We do like feedback forums during the midterm. So I have this idea of teaching and with students and teachers kind of as a circular model and it was like a cooking model. So, I would feed the students certain things, different ingredients would go in, spices, the meat, the vegetables, those were all different ideas like reading and writing. And then the students kind of process that, and then they would evaluate it, they would give a critique. And based on that critique, I would either do more of something, just like at any restaurant. When the dish is good, the chef should stay with that dish, improve upon that dish. Things that don't work out, I slowly start removing from my classroom. And then once in a while, I think it's always good to introduce a new item to the menu. And so just kind of experimenting with things, especially all the new technology, all the different things about social emotional learning in the classroom. So that's my teaching philosophy, the circular feedback wheel. Yeah.
I see. Thank you. Thank you very much, Bob. Okay then. So we are teachers and we are educators. And in our, the educational, how can I say, way, let's say, or our story in teaching stories, we have sometimes ups and downs. Sometimes we have successful stories, and sometimes we have some bad or struggling stories. And if you have, can you tell us one or two success stories of yours, something inspirational?
Yeah. I mean, I like to think about my success stories as the success stories of my students. And I think one of the most inspirational moments, was after teaching in Ethiopia. There was a civil war recently in 2020 that affected the country very severely. And just to be able to be in contact with my students, them telling me about how they are continuing their education, that they needed, money and support. And I was able to kind of raise money for them to be, they were studying to be doctors, engineers, lawyers, future leaders of Ethiopia. And I think for me, that's the success story, was hearing my students talking about my classes, saying what they had learned in my class, knowing how far they had gone, all the struggles, all of the issues that were happening in the world. And still, at the end of the day, what they were asking me for, which to them was a very shameful question to ask their teacher for help, was very inspirational, that there was this connection with my students still, that they felt that they could connect with me, that I was able to support them, that my community, all around the world were also able to help my students. So that's one of my success stories.
I see. Thank you. Thank you very much, Bob, for sharing with us. And if I'm not wrong, you have lived and worked different countries.
Yeah.
Huh? And when you think about that countries, which which one actually was challenging for you, and how did you cope with this challenge?
Mhm. I think every country, every time you move abroad, every time you go on a international study or work experience, there's a lot of challenges, and lots of them have to do with culture, about moving to a place. And I think once you get used to moving and relocating, finding new friends, finding places to eat and go, the culture of work starts to get in the way. I would say that my most challenging and most rewarding experience was working in Ethiopia. I
Mm-hmm.
was in the city of Mekelle in the northern part in Tigray.
I see.
And yeah, just very low resource at times. I had the opportunity, the fortune to be able to work near the office. So I did have some supplies and equipments. But it was also my first time actually teaching a high school class. I was the sole teacher for 11th grade English. So I came up, I developed
Uh-huh.
my own curriculum, I created all the assessments, I created all the informal assessments, formative assessments, journal writing. I really threw myself into that work, and that was really, it felt like my first year of teaching. Uh, and yeah, there was a lot of stress, and I think that I wouldn't be the teacher I am today without all the challenges and dealing with living in a different country, different culture, different language. But at the same time, I think the thing that really made it worthwhile was something my principal said to me was, even though you have all these challenges, Bob, and you might have some issues with other teachers, maybe, uh, you know, what he said was, at the end of the day, you have the respect of your students. He told me that. He said he could see that. And I think that, that in itself was, at the end of the day, what I strive to do to be successful with is connecting with my students, and having that, like,
Sorry.
teacher student relationship that goes beyond just the classroom.
Uh-huh. I got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I just want to remind something, if you have any questions to Bob, so you can ask them. There is a question bar. Okay, you can write your questions there, so I can divert it to him. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you have, I mean, if I'm not wrong, you have the given lots of training sessions. You
Hmm.
have presentations with different schools. When you think about that sessions, what was or were the most interesting situation that you faced during your sessions?
When I first came to Turkey, in 2019, I was presenting, locally in Adana. I also did a presentation at Turkey TESOL and Eskişehir. I think for me, maybe not situation, but I think the most interesting thing as a teacher, as a lifelong learner, is to kind of see how I have progressed as a teacher trainer.
Uh-huh.
I think before I was really focused on talking about technology, about dumping ideas, about, use this, use this, use this, use this. Um, and I think that my philosophy now for teacher trainings, and I think, yeah, my philosophy for teacher trainings is to really focus on an idea, a theory, as the foundation for what I'm talking about, and include examples, include actual practical things that teachers can do in the classroom as much as possible. And I always find it interesting here. It's a very small world in the English language teaching world, that I've done a presentation
Exactly.
somewhere, and then a month or a year later, somebody said that they saw me at a presentation, whether it was online or face to face, and I can connect to people here in Turkey all over the country. So I think that's,
Uh-huh.
for me, the most interesting, the most important part about teacher trainings is building this community of practice, and really sharing ideas and sharing struggles and helping each other.
I see. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you very much, Bob.
you're welcome.
And Bob, we are living in a kind of in a life. Actually, there is a huge technology with us. So, and we cannot run away from it. So sometimes it's really difficult to follow it, to catch up with the things that happening around it. So, but how do you do that? How do you stay updated with the latest developments and trends in education or in ELT world?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of great resources. I'm just going to plug my English language program. There's an American English American English State.gov. You can find lots of great resources. I think for me, it's what's happening in the field. Paying attention to research, but also going to teacher trainings myself. Going to conferences, attending, seeing what people are using out in the field, what their research is about, and really bringing that into the classroom. I also just love watching things on YouTube, like short form videos, and a lot of these things about how the world, climate change, about how the brain works, about social emotional learning, all of those things that I'm just interested in, like watching on YouTube, on Vox Video, or Explained on Netflix. Those are ideas that I like to bring into the classroom. So a lot of my ideas I just get from, I think, just listening and watching other people talking about their classrooms. And so something that I was able to bring into the classroom for a speaking class was where the rhetorical appeals, so talking about pathos, ethos, logos, and then talking about commercials and how to make a good argument in speech writing.
I got it. Thank you. Thank you very much, Bob. There is something here from our audiences. Let me bring it to the screen. So what it says, Melissa says, I don't have a question, but I just want to say that thank you so much for your hardworking teacher, Bob. Stay strong.
Thank you.
Okay.
Is that one of my students?
I think so. Let me put it on screen again. Here is it. Did you see?
No. Can I? Oh, wait.
If you go down.
Down. Oh. I've never done this before.
Melissa says, I don't have a question, but I just want to say that thank you very much, so much for your hardworking teacher, Bob. Stay strong.
There's so many. I can't find it.
Oh, okay. No problem. I just read it for you. So let me, another one is here. This is a question.
Yeah.
Here is the question. What is the most compelling situation that you have been through your studies specifically? Can you consider your study?
Can you say that one more time?
What is the most compelling situation that you have been through your studies specifically? Can you consider your study?
Okay. About
Furkan is asking.
Furkan. Hi, Furkan. Good question. So I guess if you're talking specifically about my graduate studies, I would say that my emphasis was on assessment. I did a lot of research on assessment. We also developed a diagnostic examination in Ethiopia. I think just talking about the theories, the fundamentals of creating good assessments, I think is very important. I think my Instagram's gonna stop in 5 minutes. I set an hour limit, so if I disappear, I'll come back.
Okay.
I don't know how to disable that. Yeah, but I think as a teacher, we always have to think about how we assess our students, and it's not always with multiple choice tests. It's not with quizzes. It's even just the interactions in our classrooms. And I think a lot of teachers, we don't feel that we have time for formative assessments. Those assignments in the classroom that don't give us, we don't have to give a score for them. I think those are the moments where students actually grow without the pressure, without the stress of getting a score, not being evaluated, but rather like being able to use their ability in the classroom and being able to experiment and have fun and play with the language.
I see. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, Bob.
You're welcome.
Can I move to another question because there are two
Sure.
more questions?
Okay.
Okay. So, and yes, Emrah is asking, I feel that he sets comfortable and peaceful atmosphere with his students. Can he share any of his class routines that help him build rapport with his students?
Ooh, yeah. So I think this is also one of the biggest things for me was as a novice teacher, as somebody learning how to teach, incorporating routines into almost every class. So at the moment now, I teach a writing class. I call it writing on Tuesday. No, writing on Thursday. Tuesday is reading. We do like a warm-up game, some kind of vocabulary game, just to wake up the students. Also, if students come late. I'm also doing a quizzes, just to
Yeah,
review.
quizzes.
Quizzes
Exact.
with the double Z. I do that before the class, just to, so if I missed anything in the class, we do that. They love it as a game. And now something that I really have been enjoying, it's not about rapport, but I think it is actually. We do silent reading after lunch. So right after lunch, we do 15 minutes of silent reading. And there is a trust, because when you sit silently, and I'm reading my own book, you have to kind of
I
be
see.
aware that students are actually reading or not. But there also is this respect that all the students are quiet, all the students are silent. If they're maybe not reading an English book, I don't know, but at least, a lot of the other students are able to read for 15 minutes, which isn't a lot. It's not enough for a week.
Exactly.
It's not enough for one day, in my opinion, but just kind of building those habits. I think another thing that my students have really enjoyed is that, and I started doing this during the pandemic, during online classes, my way of checking in with the students, my way of calling for roll and making sure every student participated somehow in the class was, I had like a question of the day. And I would actually greet all the students, and I still do this to this day. It takes about 30 minutes, and it's something that I enjoy. My students and their feedback have said that they really appreciate that time, because I also think it's a time when they're answering questions. One of the questions was last week, Tuesday, was what's something that everybody in the world should know or learn? And they answered that question. The Thursday was, what is something that you want to learn more about? And I think when the students answer that question in the class, they get the speaking practice, even though it's a reading class, but they also get to hear each other's answers, so they're starting to get comfortable with it. It's quiet too. I know when the class is listening to each other, when there's not a lot of distractions going on, they're getting ready to answer the question on their own. I think something that I do to not have my students anxious is that if they can't answer it right away, I just say, I'll come back to you, and I move on, and then I eventually come back to them. If they steal somebody else's idea, that's great. If they agree with another student, that's wonderful. But that, I think, talking about, our personal lives, and in the writing class, this is something that I've always loved, is having journals. My students, I think this was an interesting one. I never asked my students, but I asked them in a journal. Nobody else could read it except for me. I asked.
Hello? We can't hear you. Bob? Now okay. Wonderful.
I don't know how to turn it off, so this is how I limit my use of social media. So,
But it's okay.
Yeah, they had to write about something that they wanted to change about themselves, and that was very personal, and it was very, they had to really trust me to write some of the things that they wrote, and I got to know them very well, their personalities, their characters. Even I could tell what I could agree with them about the changes they wanted to make based on kind of their performance in the classroom, their attitude, their so yeah,
I
all
see.
of those things I think make me help me to understand my students. And I think when I understand my students, I don't create a classroom that's full of rules and punishment. I create a classroom that's full of mutual respect. And my
I
classrooms, yeah,
see.
they do get kind of chaotic. I think if anybody came into my classroom, they would think like, what's wrong with this class? But I think one of the biggest things about learning is you remember things when you're, what's the word? When you're excited, when there's excitement, when you're stimulated, you're going to remember something because your teacher said something really ridiculous and the whole class laughs. Oh, last routine is now we start the slow clap. So one student will start it, but it's not a joke. Yeah. It's actually, we're using it in a positive way. I just
I see.
appreciate it because now my students start to clap like this.
I like this one for
Yeah.
clapping. Yeah,
And they
nice
all
one.
join in. And it just kind of breaks the mood.
Definitely. I totally agree. Okay, clapping is always works, by the way.
Yeah,
It's
of
always
course.
work. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Bo. And
Yeah, thank you, Furkan, for the question.
maybe if you were here, maybe you would like to see my screen. There are maybe 5 or 6 questions from our
Yeah,
audiences to ask you, but I will try to ask them. But I want to ask you my questions to my questions. But let me ask you another question
yeah.
from our audiences.
Okay.
Mina is asking, are you still interested in computer science? If yes, let's assume that you have a chance to improve yourself in this field. What would you like to do in the near future?
So yeah, I've always thought about this going back, learning programming again. I started programming when computer languages were kind of boring. You couldn't do
Uh-huh.
much. There wasn't, they weren't online, there weren't smartphones. It's an exciting time, I think, now, especially with these web apps. I definitely want to learn a programming language or create an app to help with language learning and help with teachers. There's this like super great book that I've created on Excel that I would love to be able to create a product, help teachers with assessments, being able to tally up all their scores, being able to use item analysis to see which students
Uh-huh.
did well in this particular question and looking at averages. And yeah, it's something that I've developed on Excel for, over the last, I don't know, 5, 6 years, 10 years. Something I developed, yeah, that I've
I see.
cobbled together. So I would love to be able to create something with somebody else, another programmer, something education related, something to help students learn and to kind of, I don't know, make our jobs as teachers easier.
I see. Okay.
Thank you,
Thank
Mina.
you. Thank you very much, Bob. And let me ask you another one. The question
Yeah,
is
lots of
here.
questions.
Yeah, I don't know. They love you. That's
Oh,
why they're
no, no,
asking.
no.
How
I
to deal
just,
with this? Huh? Yes.
no, I just said they like the lights or something. I
I see.
just do this
How to
YouTube thing.
I see. And there is another question, which
Yeah,
is how to deal with the students who are anxious with respect to looking mistaken in their answers.
this is one of my students, former students. Hi. Um, so I think that you have to create an environment, and it starts with the teacher of being able to make mistakes and laughing at your own mistakes. I don't think any teacher walks into the classroom and knows everything. Um, and even if you did, with the lack of sleep, with the too much coffee, you're gonna make a mistake at some point. I think that, I love that my classroom, the students are on, different levels, yet they still are able to speak. I think that a lot of it is like creating, like, I wouldn't say forced participation, but this
Uh-huh.
expectation of participation that at some point in the day, everybody's going to have to say something. And if you're not going to be able to say, an eloquent, complex sentence, with transition markers, you still can contribute in some way. And I think a lot of times for me, everything starts with, think, pair, share, or write it first. You know,
Uh-huh.
I love using Padlet. I love using, these digital participation tools because I think it allows students to get those ideas out. They can fix those mistakes. They can figure out what's going on. They can see other students' examples. And I think once they're able to do that, they can start to form their own language. And I think that we shouldn't create like a forced participation. We should create an expectation for
Oh,
participation,
I see.
you know.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it's about being unbiased. It's about just going down the rows. It's about randomly calling students, but being able to call every student at some point, and not just calling on, the students that raise their hand. I get tired sometimes and I let the one student that talks talk. But I think, yeah, in my class, there isn't this, these classroom management issues where students are just raising their hands, trying to
I
answer.
see.
They
Mm-hmm.
know that they're going to be next. They know kind of that at some point I will call on them. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that's the one step. I think the other step is, I create this like setup at the first day, the first week of class, we have this respect wall. And this is easy. All you say is respect. And one, respect your
That's
teacher,
important. Mm-hmm.
respect your classmates, respect the classroom. Sometimes I add respect yourself or respect other classrooms.
Definitely.
And I just give them that as the values. And I ask students to come up with how they would do that. So the students actually are the ones that write in suggestions or, the actual, the actions that we have to do in order to respect our classmates. Listen carefully, don't mess around in the class when the teacher's talking, things like that. I don't have to say that, but the only thing I have to say is that we have respect for all of these different things, and I love it when students write about respecting themselves, about like not being so harsh on yourself when you make mistakes. And I think you have to
I see.
create that, I don't want to call it a safe space because that word's out, but, you have to create like, a communicative, participatory environment where students feel like they're part of a classroom. And I don't know what happened in the water in my class, but all the students seem to get along pretty well, and there's no like rivalries. There's definitely cliques, but there isn't this environment where students are like competing against each other, where there's like bullying. And I really appreciate that about these students that are in my class. So shout out to Gamma 1. Gamma 1.
I see. Wonderful. Thank you very much, Bob.
You're
Really, it's a
welcome.
wonderful answer for the question. I want to ask my questions, but there are still questions are coming.
No, ask your
So,
question. Jump in.
okay, let me ask you another question from here. It
Yeah.
says, "Hi, sir, hi. I want to ask that
Uh-huh.
shouldn't we put technology and technological apps for teaching in ELT curriculum? By the way, we missed you a lot, Chukurova.
Who is this?
King in the West. He's asking. I don't know,
Mustafa.
but I think from Chukurova University, they
Yeah.
know you.
I think the tech question's like a hard question. I think it requires resources. I think it does require teacher training. I think that since the pandemic, I don't know how many teachers have gone back to in-service teacher trainings, specifically for using technology in the classroom. From my experience, I've seen either little to no improvement in teacher use of technology in the classroom. There are people who use a lot of technology in the classroom, but I think in general there hasn't been kind of a curriculum created for this, and maybe it's being formed in Turkey. I think other countries have gotten on to this. I think that before we introduce technology, we have to see what our needs are in the classroom. Adding a smartphone isn't going to add to a teacher's, inability to manage their classroom. I think that we have to think about this idea, the SAMRA, I forget the SAMR, substitution, augmentation, all the other ones. But, are we just replacing? Yeah, are we just replacing a book with a PDF? that's not enough, or are we kind of are we taking it to a different level where, instead of a writing class where they're writing on pieces of paper, they're creating blogs, and they're sharing these blogs with other students and they're getting feedback, how do we transform our classes? And we have to really think about assessments, because I don't think that you can just, I think technology can engage students. We should be using more visuals. We should be using more media in our classroom, but I think the idea is that we have to get to a point where our students can create, and so I think one of the things I love is that we're using Google Docs in my classroom, and students are actually writing on their phones paragraphs in the classroom. They're submitting it on Google Classroom. And, that's something that none of them have used before. Raise their hands. Anybody use Google Docs, Do I think that this is important for the classroom? Yes. Do I think it's important for their future and their careers? Yeah. Heck yes. Excuse my French. No.
Definitely. They will need them. Okay. Yeah. So thank you very much. Thank you, Bob. So we just mentioned some technological, the apps. So my next question about students, but maybe you would like to add something about it. How can students, increase their independent learning by, actual learning skills, let me say, by using online apps and different learning strategies and maybe different technological, the things to do? What are your suggestions?
Well, I've done a presentation on this, so I'm going to plug myself. Autonomous learning strategies using digital tools in the classroom. I think if we want to teach our students how to use online tools and be able to have independent learning skills, we have to incorporate these into the classroom, not just, as a one-time activity. And I fall off the wagon sometimes, but I taught my students, we were using Quizlet in the beginning. They were making vocabulary words. I have a student every week adding new words into the huge Gamma 1 Quizlet that they can have from chapter 1 to chapter 7 at the moment. And those are things that I don't force students to do. I make a homework assignment out of them. In the past, I've had a student from last year, and she said that, she ended up making a Quizlet of 1,000 words. And that she started moving away from Turkish translations to simple English translations. And
I see.
Those are the things, that practice happened in the classroom. It was a tool that I talked about. We learned how to use it together. I kind of fall off with it because I don't actually want to force my students to learn in a certain way. But, certain students will take those tools that we provide in the classroom and they'll make something more out of it, So I think we can move away from I don't want to teach how to use Duolingo in the classroom, but I want students to start to use, I don't know, like Miro or like any kind of note-taking tool to start to create graphic organizers, to start to brainstorm ideas, to start, thinking and collecting information and synthesizing that information. And I don't think that you need an app specifically to do it. You just need a tool. And there are great tools that are tech, and they last. I think one of the greatest things is I had a student. I love Google Docs because when a student gets back onto a document and edits something, I see it. So 3 years later, one of my students looks at her writing and she comments that the writing was about like your future self, like, how would life be after the pandemic? How would you be when you in the future? And she looked at it, she commented to herself and probably to me, knowing that I would see this, I don't think she knew I would see it. She commented that, have I reached these goals? And she looked at those goals and she said, some of these I have, some of these, I'm not ready yet. And I left a little comment saying, and also just remember that some of these goals you have when you're 25, 20 years old aren't going to be the same goals when you're 35, so some of those just throw them out, but having that tool, it's not like a piece of paper that students lose. It's something, online that's retrievable, maybe indestructible. I don't know.
I see. Okay. Thank you very much, Bob. Really. I How is it so far? I hope so far so good. Are
I
you
think it's
enjoying
good.
it?
Oh yeah, I
Okay,
love it. Yeah.
wonderful. If you like it, it's perfect. We love it. Thank you very much.
I can talk for hour.
Okay,
I have to
not a
get back to
problem.
grading my
Oh,
paragraphs.
I see. Okay, I'll be quick as possible.
No,
Okay.
I'm
So
enjoying it.
there is another question. Let me
Yeah.
ask you. Hi, Ida, she's asking, I think. I know that as a teachers, we should always try to find ways to keep our students motivated. However, what about for the teachers? Any tips to keep motivated as a teachers? Can you give us some tips?
I think, no disrespect to anybody I've ever worked with or currently working with, but I think the biggest thing is to be in a positive environment. So sometimes it means like, staying away from the teacher's room. Um, you know, I had one of my students ask me this question, like his biggest challenge at the school was just kind of the negativity that he experienced, and
Mm.
I thought that was amazing when a student teacher, first year, second year teaching, has got his students, is able to teach well. His only issues is with teachers, and the kind of negative environment sometimes that gets created. And I think thinking about expectations and, lowered expectations from other teachers kind of starts to creep in. I like to, keep my work in, my personal
Uh-huh.
life separate. I think the other thing for me that motivates me is that I have hobbies that I love. I do boxing. I've been doing boxing for like 18 years. And on the
Oh, nice.
Thursday, like I know that after a hard day of teaching, 6 hours straight, block lessons, that I'm going to be able to go to the gym. And that even if I am tired from teaching, that will motivate me, that will wake me up, that will give me the energy to keep going. Um,
Definitely.
yeah, and then out of that, still being able to find your teaching community. So whatever it is, your personal learning network, your professional learning network, your community of practice. I think, and what we're doing now is this RPG, the reflective practice group. So I have
Mm-hmm.
people not at the school that I talk to about teaching. I'm still able to connect with my former students who are now asking questions about, getting into the teaching profession. So welcome everybody to the teaching profession. And yeah, and just being able to connect with my own group, with the English Language Fellow. We have a website called the Community of Practice.
Uh-huh.
And,
I
I'm
see.
able to post like highlights that I've done. I made people comment, and yeah, I'm able to share the things that I do in the class that I think if I didn't share, they would just be lost in the void, just lost out in
Exactly.
space.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
Thank you. Mm-hmm.
I think if you're not like connecting with other teachers and you're working in a vacuum, you're gonna lose your motivation because nobody's gonna push you, and nobody's gonna inspire you, because I think if you want to be a good teacher, you put in the work.
Mm-hmm. I understand. Thank you. Thank you very much, Bob.
You're welcome.
There's a comment. Let me
Uh-huh.
find it here. It's a good question about teachers. How about motivation killer or energy vampire students?
I think that's, yeah. I haven't had too many I've had a few vampire students. I had a student that every time she looked at me, she would roll her eyes, you know.
But it's really interesting. Was fun. But these
I
students are always around, that kind of students.
They're always around. I think that, not to limit them to participate, but actually having this kind of unbiased, fair participation selector, whether it's random. I knew a teacher that was picking balls out of a bucket to call students. I think at some point you can kind of mitigate, the intrusiveness of some of these vampire students. I think also, getting to know them, I think,
Uh-huh.
I guess at the end of the day, what's it called? The Ted Lasso quote and it's not from Ted Lasso, but that's what I remember it from. Um, don't be judgmental, be curious. So there's something going on. try to figure that out, and maybe it's something that they don't get along with their classmates, and so they take it out on you a little bit, or things at home maybe just aren't that great, and I think that empathy allows us to not, even though they're still a vampire, we can kind of like, block it a little bit, yeah.
I
just,
see.
just yeah.
I got it. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Compassion helps. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So let me ask you. Okay, the next one is my question.
Oh
Okay.
yeah.
So
You
let me
go.
ask you, in your opinion, yeah, we are teachers, and sometimes we really get some reward about
Mhm.
our teaching. So in your opinion, what is the most rewarding aspect of teaching?
Oh wow. Okay. I think for me, it's to see students using what I learn, not just in another class, but like in their personal lives.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the comment that somebody made once, we were doing this activity, describe, analyze, interpret, was that evaluate? No, yeah, describe, analyze, evaluate. So it's kind of this, it's actually considered, it's called nonviolent communication.
Uh-huh.
And it's the way that you're supposed to look at, cross-cultural things. So you look at something, you say, ew, So slow down, describe what you see, analyze why you think it's happening. The classic example I use of a boy is feeding rats, some kind of thing. The students say he's wearing a red shirt and yellow pants, and there's like 100 rats. And I asked, does he look happy, or does he look? How does he look? And he's like, oh, he looks like he's having a good time. Okay,
Uh-huh.
And so, why do you think that this is happening? And so they start to say things like, maybe a religious thing, maybe, this boy just loves rats. And I say, okay. And then you can evaluate. Then you can say, ew,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I had a student tell me and she told me in her feedback that particular activity kind of changed the way she saw the world, which is really what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to help you with
Uh-huh.
your relationships. You're supposed to be able to do this when you have an argument with somebody, describe what happens, tell them, why do you think this happens? Oh, maybe they're tired. Maybe they didn't get enough sleep last night. Maybe they're dealing with other things. And then you can evaluate and say, hey, what you said to me made me feel hurt, and I didn't
Uh-huh.
appreciate that. So that whole idea of kind of using education as a way to help our students to kind of see the world in a different way, to see,
Uh-huh.
to have them not just experience the world, but interact with the world in a slightly different way. I think when I hear that from a student, I find that that's the most rewarding thing. It doesn't matter what the grammar that I taught my students. I think at the end of the day, it's something that they either took from me as a pre-service student, pre-service teacher. I think them telling me that they use something that I did in the classroom, in their classroom.
I see. Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
rewarding, And now that I'm not teaching
Wonderful.
teachers anymore, anything that I talk about in the classroom, whether it's keyword notes or whether it's, journal writing or something that we do in the class that's a routine, if I hear that my students have used this, that they've been doing this, another student said they started taking notes with the Cornell notes that I taught in the listening class. And they've been using that for their entire, teaching or their whole student career. And I said, that's wonderful.
That's great.
I didn't think that would stay. I wasn't saying, hey, use this forever. This is the only note-taking tool. This is the only method. No. Somebody found value in something they used in the classroom. And to me, that, when they come back and tell you those things, I think that's when a teacher feels like, oh, I did make an impact,
I see.
I think at the end of the day, that's all we want, some kind of impact, in people's lives.
That's really important point you mentioned. Thank you. Really, it's a great point about a reward. Sometimes we want different reward from our job. I mean, like the things that we do. But I think as a teacher, that's the very important point you mentioned here. Thank you.
Great.
And let's move to another question. Okay. Just a couple left, by the way. The time flies.
It does fly. We can keep
Yeah,
going. I don't care.
yeah.
I never sleep.
Ah, I see. Wonderful then. All right. So, there are some in our lives, there were, the some times we face actually sometimes difficult times and struggling times. And that times, and we say, oh, I wish I could that superpower so I could do that easily. Or
Uh-huh.
I wish I could that these superpowers so I could do that easily.
Yeah.
So when you take these superpowers in our classrooms, okay, so if you could have one superpower to use in the classroom, what would it be and how would it help you?
Well, I have two. Well, I'll use the one that I think that nobody will be able
Sure.
to figure out. So there was a TV show, I think it was called Out of This World, and the girl was an alien, and she could stop time by doing this.
Oh, I
And
see.
then time would
Uh-huh.
stop, and then she would study or do something. That's what I would do. I would just stop time, Or if I make a mistake in the classroom and I just do this, stop time, just change it and say, what mistake? Like, oh, I
Yeah,
messed up on
who
my
did that mistake?
PowerPoint. Yeah, like I
Yeah,
always
that's
correct my PowerPoints as I'm going, and I tell my students, "Hey, your teacher makes mistakes. It's okay. If you catch it, I'll give you a reward." No, I haven't done that yet. I learned that from another teacher too. I don't know if she did it on purpose. Sometimes she
I
did it
see.
on purpose. She put grammatical mistakes in her writing on purpose. I think other times she just did it by accident because she was a Japanese teacher
Oh,
of
I see.
TESOL. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that was her way of kind of hiding the fact that she could make mistakes, but it's okay. Teachers make mistakes. Sometimes they make it on
Definitely.
purpose. But yeah, this whole freezing time thing, maybe I would take a nap, during my students'
That's
maybe I
nice.
would create more of a lesson plan. Maybe there's something that I wanted to add that I couldn't find a video for, and I just freeze time for 30 minutes and I say, okay, I got it, guys.
Let's continue then.
Yeah, let's continue. Yeah.
Oh, I see. Great. Wonderful superpower. Great.
Yeah.
Okay. So let move to another one. Let's think that we finish our the interview and
Uh-huh.
you step outside your house and find a lottery ticket, end up winning with $10 million.
$10 million.
Yeah, what would you do? I think it's a huge money, but maybe
Yeah,
not for you, but for but maybe for us it's huge money.
it's huge. It's huge for me. I don't think I'll
I
ever make
see.
that.
Okay.
Well, going as the practical guy, I would take half. I would invest it into something for my retirement. I would take the other
Yeah.
half, and I want to, someday create an NGO to help students learn in refugee camps or somewhere internally displaced people. Create kind of a teacher training, teacher materials for teachers in very low resource areas, especially for refugee camps. I guess, yeah, my background is that I was a refugee. My parents left Vietnam when I was 6 months old, and we came to America when I was 2 years old. So
Wow.
that was my experience. Sometimes I had forgotten that for such a long time. Maybe I had blocked it out, but I am the child of immigrants and child of refugees, and I myself was one. So I would love to take that money and be able to pay people to teach, help people create learning opportunities wherever they are, and be able to provide resources for teachers in very
Wonderful.
low
Mm-hmm.
resource areas.
Mm-hmm. So you're gonna use that money for great purposes.
Hope so.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move another question.
Yeah.
So what is something you want to change about your teaching practice?
Um, so maybe not my teaching practice. So I saw your story about the vocabulary word meticulous.
Uh-huh.
And I would,
Yeah, about it today I shared
yeah,
it, yes.
right. So I saw that. So yeah, hit up that story. I I've been called meticulous, and particular. That's the way of saying that I'm a weirdo. But yeah, I think I put a little bit too much into the lesson sometimes. Um, you know, I think I maybe overdo things. I'm teaching about less is more, but I feel like in my classrooms I'm still not quite there yet. So that's something that I would like to incorporate more into my classroom, is creating more independent student learning through, you know, different activities, more student-centered activities. Not to say that I don't let students participate. It's just that it's a very guided, you know, technique.
I see.
Yeah,
Got
so
it.
I would like to get away from overworking and, you know, the burnout.
No, yeah, I see. Thank you. Thank you very much, Bob.
Yeah.
All right. So
There were some questions about
if
AI that I would.
yeah, I know
Yeah.
that someone asked about it. I'll ask you that one.
Okay.
So let me ask you that one. What are some ways? That question is something related with that question, this
Yeah.
question that I'm gonna
Yeah.
ask you. What
Ganze
are
is
some
reading our
ways?
minds.
Yeah, what are some ways that teacher can overcome AI in writing?
Yeah. So I think that we have to kind of get more academic. And this has been my experience with teaching online. You know, even before there was AI with Google Translate and Grammarly and all these other tools that
Yeah,
help
definitely.
students. You know, I think that we have to kind of start talking about plagiarism, and that we have to talk about, we have to have like you know, a, a student conduct thing about plagiarism, and something that they need to be taught, and there needs to be a form that tells them what plagiarism is, and an orientation for that. But I think that what I've learned from one of my fellow colleagues was that the opposite of plagiarism is citations, is using references. So the only difference between plagiarism and a quotation is just that, you know? And so, yeah, instead of stealing information, we're using this idea that we're borrowing knowledge, that we're using information that's out there to make our argument stronger. Something that I was able to do last semester was teach students how to use Scribber to make these, you know, automatic generated citations, just plug in the website. And I had students have to use 2 quotations from different sources in each of their paragraphs. And I don't know if any student can ask ChatGPT, write a cause and effect essay using these 2 references. This is the quote I want you to add, you know, make it in such a way, add the references at the bottom, go. I think if a student can do that, then they don't need they don't need AI, they don't need ChatGPT in their writing, you know. So I think that we need to start kind of going a little bit more critical thinking, that we need to start asking our students questions about, you know, personal, you know, answering personal things, but using citations. Because, yeah, one of the things that happened was I had a student, he turned in something. I knew it was, you know, AI generated. I read it. I said, okay. The only thing I asked him about was, hey, I can't find your references. Can you send me a PDF or a web link to these references? And it was like John Smith, 2018, you know? And I asked colleagues before I did this. I asked all my friends, hey, can you find this? And everybody's, nope, I can't find anything similar to this, Bob. So yeah, ChatGPT hallucinates. ChatGPT 3.5 hallucinates. You know, I think as it gets better in different iterations, it might be able to overcome these things on its own. But and then I asked that's all I asked him. And he said, oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Bob. My cousin helped me write this essay. And I said, if your cousin's name is ChatGPT, then
That's really great, yeah.
sure, you know. But so that's how I was able to. I mean, I knew what was going on. He just was going to get a failing grade, not because of plagiarizing, because I couldn't prove it, but it was that he wasn't using he wasn't doing the instructions from the classroom assignment of using 2 quotations from a source that I could actually read, you know.
And we just talked about the AI, but Azra, she asked something about AI.
Yeah.
Is AI motivate students or demotivate them?
I think if we teach students how to use AI, I think that, you know, AI is a tool, right? I mean, I I don't know. I mean, I think about it as like steroids and working out and exercising. You could do the weightlifting, and if you're taking drugs, you're gonna get big, you know? Is it rewarding?
Yeah, I don't know.
You know, I think about this thing where we have to teach students how they can use AI. And I do tell my students, I just don't do it in the classroom, but, you know, students ask about IELTS tests for writing, and I say, ask ChatGPT. It has all the information, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Are IELTS tests like creative? Are they like a form of, you know? No, they're standardized. You know, it's a standardized test. If a student asks me how to write a motivational letter, you know, motivation letter for an application, I say, hey, write something and then ask ChatGPT to make it better. Is it like cheating? No. I think that, you know, every good writer, they say, has a good editor, right? Every good author has somebody checking their work, making that like their work, you know, getting rid of these things, asking questions to clarify things. There is no author in the world that doesn't have an editor, you know, and even when you're doing research, you have a team of research assistants helping you with certain things, you know. Can you say that that writing is like, you know, is just belongs to that one person? No, I mean, the ideas at the end of the day belong to that one person, you know. So I think that we have to start moving to this idea where we ask critical thinking skills that question our ideas and generate better ideas. And I think Heidi asked something about what's it called? She asked something about creating classrooms using AI. I think that if we don't want to do that busy work of just typing out like a syllabus, yeah, if we want to, you know, there's a lot of information out there and we're just regurgitating it. I think if you're creating a new class, you know, I saw on Instagram, you know, people are making classes about Taylor Swift and her business model, you know, or her and her songography and how, you know, writing what's the ethics of, you know, what she had to do with her music to get it back, you know. I think that that's what AI can't do. You know, it can't combine these things that were never existed together. I think about multidisciplinary skills. I think about, you know, teachers who are computer science majors who also have a love for boxing, you know, and we put it together into a class somehow. We use these ideas, you know. If you're a teacher, I did a class where we talked about water rights, you know, water crisis in a writing class. It was just something I was, you know, particularly interested in at the time. And my class became kind of like, you know, this environmental studies / you know, science class, because they actually had to look at research to talk about water crisis. We watched videos in the classroom. So I think that, yeah, you can ask ChatGPT to fill in like the easy stuff, how to write a paragraph. We can ask ChatGPT to help us with, you know, our lesson plans. You know, those lesson plans are basic. I don't think anybody's going to win an award for, you know, any lesson plan that we create on a normal day or that ChatGPT can make for us, you know. But I think it's when we want to do something innovative that we can use, you know, that time that AI saves us, you know. I asked ChatGPT to help me with presentations. I just want some more information, you know. And what I do with that information is very different than what I asked ChatGPT to give me, you know. I present it in a different way. Instead of just reading something, you know, they're interacting with these ideas. They're categorizing things by these 8 categories for participation that I asked ChatGPT to give me, you know. I admit it, guys, you know. I will do it sometimes.
Yeah, well, I do also. I think most of us does it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's technology, and there's a saying that, like, on the comment, I don't know Jump comment there. I know Jump says, "I will keep saying human touch is a must." She says.
Yeah, and I think about this. If you've been to conferences lately, if you're looking at the research in TESOL, you see these 2 dichotomies, you know, these 2 worlds. One is technology, one is ChatGPT. The other one is social emotional learning.
Emotional learning.
And so there's this thing, there's a schism, there's a dichotomy that's happening between these 2 worlds, you know, this world where are we going to become complete androids, you know, are we just going to become robots, or do we go back to So whenever I go to these conferences now, I see those two topics: mindfulness in the classroom, social emotional learning, ChatGPT.
PT.
Those two ideas are kind of the culture wars that are happening in in ELT at the moment. And
Totally agree with you.
Right, and I think we're fighting for the hearts and minds of teachers and students. It's like, what side do you belong to? Team Edwards or Team whatever the other Twilight vampire's name was? So which team do you belong to? And I think that always there's something in the middle. I don't. I was able to make wonderful connections online on Zoom during the pandemic. New and old connections. There is a human touch. I think when we have a voice, when we have like the ability to share our facial expressions and our emotions.
Definitely.
Exactly.
The human. We should be there.
Yeah.
We should be there. Okay. So thank you very much, Bob.
You're welcome.
So I think it's time to ask you the last question.
What is? Oh yeah.
And then I think because we have taken lots of time from you. So
okay.
Okay. So are you ready for the last one?
Oh yeah.
Okay. What is your motto?
What is my motto? Okay. I talked about this 2 weeks ago. My motto, and it's kind of been passed along from other fields, other things that I've done, especially boxing. My motto is that every action has an opposite and equal reaction. So the second law of Newton's thermodynamics is that when you create something, if you do something in the classroom, whether it's happiness or filled with anger, you're going to get the opposite and equal reaction. So I think the things that as teachers, when we think about how much energy we put into the class, whether it's the lesson planning, whether it's interacting with students, we're going to get that equal and opposite reaction,
I see.
And I think that that's probably the thing that I suffer with about, being meticulous, is that I feel that if I put all this energy into it, my students will bring it back. It doesn't always work, There's a limit to all of that.
I see.
Yeah.
So wonderful. It's a great motto, I think.
Great.
So thank you very much, Bob. And so what's that? We are so lucky to have you at Ege University School of Foreign Languages. Canım Bob. She's Sinem hocam says.
Sinem.
Yes, it's great to see you.
Canım.
Okay. So that's all my questions, Bob. And
awesome.
before finishing our last sessions, would you like to add anything else?
I would just say that, thank you very much, Volkan. It was a pleasure to meet you and Manisa.
Yeah, that pleasure is mine.
It was a pleasure. Thank you for this opportunity to be able to speak to the ELT world at large. Thanks for everybody who came on, former students, colleagues, all of that, friends out there. And I just want to say that I think that we are in a time where we're in a very important time. and
Exactly.
And I think that a lot of the choices that we make, and I think a lot of the ideologies, the ideas that we take going forward. I haven't thought of this. I think that these ideas that are floating around the world, I think we need to reform them, that we need to kind of take what has been done, see what can be made out of that, and kind of start to look at our own experiences and our past experiences in different ways in order to kind of start moving forward.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Bob. And before I just want to say one more time, I would like to say thank you very much for being with us. Thank you very much for sharing your suggestions, your ideas with us. And also, which is the most important one, you spend your time here with us. That was very precious.
Awesome.
Thank you very much, Bob. Thank you. And Bob Nguyen was with us tonight in Teacher Talk Standard 41. We had a fruitful section with him. And we are going to be here in the next week on the same day at the same time, as you know, every Monday at 9 p.m. with different educators from different part of the world. So until next time, Take care of yourself. Take care of yourself, Bob, and
Thank
also
you.
take care of all the people who came and joined to the session. Until next time, take care of yourself again, and
Bye.
bye bye everybody, and
İyi
peace.
akşamlar.
İyi
Good night.
akşamlar. Good night.